And now, from the Room 111 studios, it's Hacking Engagement with James Sternevin.
Well, hey there, listener, and welcome back to the Hacking Engagement podcast. I'm so glad you're here. It's funny because last week I was interviewing my nephew, Russell Daup, and he said, I like how you say that. I'm so glad you're here. It kind of makes you sound like Mr. Rogers or something. So that wasn't what I was going for. But I'll take the compliment and just go with it. What can I say, man? To introduce this outstanding episode today, I want to tell you a little bit about my wife and me. We love this television show called The Big Bang Theory. And a lot of times at night, we'll turn on an episode. I mean, we've seen all of them, but we'll turn on an episode. It's just kind of a way to unwind and chill out and get sleepy. One thing that always tickled me about The Big Bang Theory is the character Sheldon Cooper, does not get sarcasm. I mean, it's kind of like one of those things that he just doesn't see the point in it. I mean, he is not the most socially adept person by a long shot. And what happens is one of his friends will say something sarcastic and he'll just take it at face value and not get the subtle dig that they're putting into him. Now, sarcasm is one of those things that I find fascinating. So the first thing I need to do is give you a definition of sarcasm. Sarcasm is the use of irony to mock or convey contempt. Think about that for a second. Think about that definition. If you're using sarcasm on someone, you're not being kind to them. In fact, you're elevating yourself at their expense. Now, a lot of you might think, Jim, this is ridiculous. Sarcasm is awesome. Well, it can be awesome, but it needs to be managed carefully in a classroom. I'm going to give you two stories right now. The first one was I was in a colleague's class. Kid did not do their homework. Now, instead of asking the student, hey, what happened? Can I help you with this? Did you just forget? What went on there? The teacher resorted to a sarcastic comment, as in, wow, that's really going to prepare you to compete in the global economy. That was not a good move. And I say that because, the kid, he kind of rolled with it, gave him some sarcasm right back. Everybody's kind of snicking around. But that statement set up a confrontational relationship between the teacher and student. And also it might have confirmed a lot of the insecurities the kid already had about themselves. Like, wow, maybe I am irresponsible, or, oh, wow, maybe I am stupid. So that sarcastic statement by that teacher, in other words, he got a laugh out of the class at the kid's expense. I don't think that was a smart move. People use sarcasm all the time. Had a female administrator one time, really liked her. She was a witty person. But one time she was walking by my room and I made a comment to somebody, hey, I like your haircut. It looks nice. And she turns to me and said, well, I bet it's been a long time since you've had a haircut. And everybody around me laughed. I laughed. I mean, heck, if you're a bald dude, you better learn to roll with it some. And I thought to myself, that wasn't a smart thing for her to do because, a lot of kids saw it and, some other teachers saw it and everybody just kind of rolled with it. And it's not that I'm upset about that. I mean, I am aware that I don't have hair, but I thought to myself, man, that's not really a great interaction to model to these kids. It's like, I'm going to elevate myself by making Mr. Sturdivant look bad. I told her that. I said, hey man, why'd you do that? I wouldn't make fun of you. And she's like, oh, I'm just messing with you. Just playing with you. And that's generally the response that people have when they talk about sarcasm. Is don't take offense. Don't be so thin-skinned. I'm just messing with you. But I don't think it's a real good thing to do with students or in front of students. Now, there are some ways that you can use sarcasm. I'm going to talk about these today, but I'm challenging you. I want you to try to purge this tendency from your interaction with students. I want you to start thinking about sarcasm as kind of like a vice. Now, as with most vices, if you have a vice, you probably don't think it's a big deal. It could be like gambling or gossip or gluttony or drinking or cigarette smoking, whatever. I'm not so sure that the people around you feel the same. Hey man, you're going to love this episode, and it's an important one. It's a great one to try to help you bond with kids, and bonding with kids is crucial in terms of engagement. Hey, so get this, listener. my publisher contacts me and says, I love the way hacking engagement is selling. How about doing 50 more? I was all over it like a cheap suit. So the name of the book is Hacking Engagement Again, 50 Teacher Tools That Will Make Students Love Your Class. And it's going to be available on Amazon's virtual shelves in the late summer of 2017. In the meantime, if you're looking for more teacher empowerment resources, as always, visit hacklearning.org. Now let's get back to the solutions part of the Hacking Engagement podcast. Man, do I love this topic. I mean, these topics about human interaction, I think, are so much fun to do in the classroom, and they're so powerful. This lesson on sarcasm could impact students their entire life and could dramatically improve their life if they learn how to use sarcasm in the right way instead of just to abuse people and to elevate themselves at others' expense. The first thing you need to do with kids is you need to challenge them to define the word and to check out its origins. So just for the first couple minutes, you might have them pair up, but then they're going to see that definition that I had mentioned in the introduction, and then check this out. They're going to go check out the origins of the word. It's a Greek word, sarcasmos, and it was originally referring to tearing the flesh off the bone. So when you think about the definition of sarcasm and the origins of sarcasm, it's probably one that you should use pretty sparingly in your interactions with people. Now, the first thing I like to do is I like to be the foil. I like to be an example to my students. And I don't want to come off as too high and mighty on this because I could be accused of being a hypocrite. I have used sarcasm. It's not something I'm proud of, but I've done. It's kind of like a default, something that comes out so naturally. And I've done it with kids. I think I did it with a kid recently, and I caught myself. Now, I used that moment as a teachable moment. I was in front of my students. I said something sarcastic to a student. I said, hold on, guys. I just did something that I'm not proud of. I made a sarcastic statement over here to little Johnny. And everybody's like, what are you talking about? And I talked about, how I don't like to elevate myself at the expense of kids. And then I apologized to Johnny. I made a big deal out of it. And the kids thought it was kind of weird, but interesting at the same time. So I would challenge students to talk first about their interactions with teachers and make it about you at first. See if they can come up with an example of when you were sarcastic to them. Now, I challenged my kids to do this, and they were able to come up with something I'd forgotten about, which doesn't make me feel good. And we talked about what prompted that sarcastic response from me or from another teacher, and how that then impacted the relationship moving forward. And I can tell you, in a lot of times, the kid felt compelled to maybe get the teacher back or throw some sarcasm back their way, which I thought was interesting. Now, I'll never forget this. I think I made this sarcasm switch a number of years ago. I like to share my life with my kids. I think it's a way to become more approachable, and I've talked about that a lot in these podcasts. And I had a situation where I was talking about my dog or something like that. And I had a kid in the front row who was a bit sarcastic, could be negative, say the following: Why are you telling us about this, man? This has nothing to do with the subject matter. I don't really care about your dog or whatever. And it was a very negative comment. And I think some of the other kids in the class were like, whoa, man. Now, that was a perfect setup for a sarcastic response back from Mr. Sturdivant. It put me on the spot, and I could have easily responded back in a negative way. But what I did was I was just very honest with the kid. I said, well, I like to share aspects of my life, and hopefully I'll become more approachable and I can learn about you in the process. And the student, what do you say to that? No, don't do that. There was nothing really for the student to say. The other kids in class, I think, were kind of relieved that it didn't turn into a confrontation. And guess what? Things got better between me and that kid as a result. I think after that, and this was a number of years ago, and I'm thinking back to it, I think after that, he actually approached me a few times. So my rather humble response, I want to give myself credit because I actually did something right, was perfect for that situation. So Challenge your kids to talk about times perhaps when you were sarcastic to them, or maybe another educator was sarcastic to them, and what was the surroundings? I mean, what prompted that response, and how did the relationship evolve after that? Then I want you to challenge students to talk about when they have used sarcasm with someone. Oh, darn. Now they have to think about when they were wrong. And so I want you to maybe do some role plays or pair up and have a little group discussions about when they were sarcastic. What were the circumstances that prompted that response, and how did the relationship evolve after that? Now, there's going to be positive examples. I used sarcasm with this kid and all of a sudden we became best friends. There's going to be those, but it will elicit some really fascinating conversations between your students. But sarcasm isn't always bad. I have vices. Like I like to drink red wine. And there are times when drinking red wine enriches my life tremendously. There's also been some times when I drank a little too much red wine and I said something stupid. Sarcasm is not all evil. I'm not trying to portray it that way. It just needs to be used very carefully. Here's a great way to use it in a classroom. You can challenge your students to create an editorial cartoon in which they use sarcasm. And it could be for pretty much any topic. You can put this editorial cartoon in the past, you can make it contemporary, and challenge them to use sarcasm in the cartoon. A great example would be, people have pretty passionate feelings about the presidents in the 21st century, so they might love or hate Donald Trump, or they might love or hate Barack Obama, or they might love or hate Hillary Clinton, or Mitt Romney, or whomever. You could challenge them to do a sarcastic cartoon based upon that subject. Now, what's interesting about this is after all the kids have looked at each other's cartoons and shared ideas about it, it's real important that you have some debriefing session in which you challenge your students to say, why did you pick this person? What are your feelings toward this target? And I think that is really a great switch to flip for students, because they start thinking, well, I really don't like Donald Trump, and I made this cartoon to make him look bad. Okay, if you feel that way, is sarcasm then a tactic you should be using with your classmates? Wow. Eureka moments can be painful. So here we are at the What You Can Do Tomorrow section. The first thing you need to do with your students is to challenge them to learn about this word sarcasm. Have them look up the definition, have them look up the origins, and that should really set up the other activities well. And then challenge them to think about a time when someone was sarcastic to them. It could be another teacher, it could be a parent, it could be a classmate or a friend, but have them recall a time when someone was sarcastic to them, and then maybe have them pair up and talk about the circumstances surrounding that sarcasm and how it impacted the relationship moving forward. Now, in many cases, it might not have any impact. The kid might think that what the person that said about them was funny, and that's fine. You need those examples. But I'll bet you'll find some examples where a kid said, it really ticked me off, or I felt like I had to get even with them. Then you need to flip the switch. You need to challenge students to recall a time when they were sarcastic to someone else. And again, they're going to have to talk about what prompted this response, how it impacted the relationship going forward. And again, you'll have some ones where it was no big deal, but you'll have some examples where it did impact relationships. And those are the ones that I think can be the most powerful. I also want you to deputize your kids. If you're going to be a good role model to them, then you shouldn't be using sarcasm to put kids down. And if you do, have your kids call you on it and then apologize and then maybe use it as a teachable moment. Finally, I want you to use sarcasm in a constructive way. Have your kids do an editorial cartoon about a topic that you've been addressing in class, and have them utilize the tool sarcasm to communicate their message. And when it comes to that editorial cartoon, debrief your kids on their target. What was it about this target that made them create this cartoon? What are their feelings toward their target? And then have them brainstorm ways that using sarcasm in interactions with people that they know on a regular basis could have some very negative implications. Sarcasm is one of those things that can be used for good or evil. It's powerful. Understand its power in your interactions with students, but also enlighten them about the power of sarcasm and how they might want to also monitor their use of it as well. Good luck tomorrow engaging your kids.
Show notes for this episode can be found at jamesalansturdivant.com. If you enjoy Hacking Engagement, please subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes.